Johnathan Dunne is a Blaze Media podcaster. He's a writer, a keynote speaker who factually explains why America is an exceptional and unique nation. He compares America to other nations and ideologies and examines why America inspired a 5,000-year leap forward. If you haven't read the book, The 5,000-Year Leap, you need to write that title down. It's one of the best books you'll ever read, The 5,000-Year Leap. Johnathan also identifies the domestic and international problems we face today, explains how the idea of America solves the problems that we face. And he is recently married, immigrated to the United States, but has been a lover of America for many decades. And God has just opened up the door for him to speak in various places across the nation. And he's got a delightful delivery. And I'm looking forward to getting to know him and be a buddy. He actually lives between here and Oklahoma City now. And so we're looking forward to participating with him in the future. So put your hands together and let's welcome Johnathan Dunne this morning.
Show you how much I've integrated into society. I've even got my cowboy boots with the American flag. So this morning I'm going to talk to you about reclaiming America's narrative. And I've been doing this tour for quite a while. I've been honored with many, many presentations. But I've got a bit of feedback, and I'm going to address right off the start two criticisms I've got from this tour. The first one is, John, you talk a lot about America, but there's certain terms you don't use. I didn't hear you talk about left or right very much. I didn't hear you talk about Trump or Biden or Republicans or Democrats. And there's a reason for that. I'm Irish. This country has had, for the last 5 years, Russian collusion. Do we really want the encore to be Irish collusion in your elections? But that's just a joke. There's a serious criticism I've had. John, look around at the country right now. Look at all the problems we face. We've got a senile president. We've got questions over our election. We've got inflation. We've got gas prices. We've got the world trying to get us into World War III over in Ukraine. Why should I care what you have to say about America's narrative? And isn't it really arrogant to say that America's narrative and America's story can solve every problem we face? Well, if I do my job right, you'll know exactly why that is not the case. You see, America's narrative changed the world. And I'm going to prove it to you by telling you the power of a narrative. The first one, there was a great American called Martin Luther King. Have you noticed the last time he got his full title? Because his full title is the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Is there a reason why his Reverend has never been told? It's always Dr. Martin Luther King or MLK. There's a reason why they've stripped him of that title. But the second one is to tell you the power of a narrative. You see, a narrative changed the standard of living greatly in Europe, and it was done by an American president. What was that narrative? It was simple. It was elegant. It was short. Mr. President, tear down that wall. You see, not even Brian Stelter of the great CNN, the independent journalist that he is, could misconstrue that message. They don't have columnists on MSNBC kind of going, when he said that, what was he really saying? I wonder what he really meant. No, it was simple. And it changed the world. You see, without rockets, without guns, without World War III, Mr. President, tear down that wall, and the wall fell. But you see, narrative alone is not enough. You see, America is built on principles. And I'm going to share the story behind the story that far too many people have forgotten. You see, Ronald Reagan was a unique kind of politician. You see, the vast majority of politicians today, when they give a presentation, they have a speechwriter. And they go, here you go, this is what you say. Or they have a fancy teleprompter, and they just follow line for line. Ronald Reagan was unique. Why? He wrote his own speeches. He wrote the line, Mr. President, tear down this wall. But what happened when he wrote those words? Now, I apologize for offending you because I know this room is probably massive fans of the State Department. I'm sure everyone has 100% approval of the State Department here. They love what they do, right? Well, in 1980, under the Reagan administration, the State Department was different, or maybe it was the same. And they said what to Mr. Reagan? They said, Mr. President, sir, please don't use these words. It will cause World War III. And he said, am I still the president? He said, yes, sir. Then put it in. It leads to a back and forth. He's traveling that day. He's in the motorcade, and he's reading the draft of the speech. And yet again, those simple words are missing. And this time he has an interaction with his generals. And he said, where's the line? Mr. President, sir, we're begging you. Trust us, we know better than you. Do not say these words. He ad-libbed them on the day. Simple, eloquent narrative. Which brings me to America. What is the narrative of America today? What is the narrative? Why do I speak out so much? Because I'm disgusted and I'm appalled at the people in your nation who say America's evil, vile, racist, disgusting, immoral, every word you want to say. No, you're not. You've just forgotten your story. But you've also forgotten it on all sides of the political spectrum. You see, I look around and I hear all the reasons why America is a great nation. There's a reason why I waited 18 years to get here legally. I could talk to you about why America is a great nation. Hell, your last president made it his campaign slogan, make America great again. I could talk to you all day long. I could talk to you about how amazing your weather is. I could talk to you about how resource rich you are, how much different you are when you travel from north to south and east to west. I could talk to you about your amazing people. Your people are unique. You seem to have forgotten it. And I'm going to begin you by telling you a story. This story can only happen in America. See, the year's 1963. Your president, whether you love him or hate him, is JFK. And he gets behind a podium like this and says, what? By the end of this decade, we're going to the moon. That can only happen in America. Why? Because America's history is my tagline. America's history is what? Making the impossible possible. You see, in Ireland or England or Europe or Australia, a president or anyone says we're going to the moon, they'll be like, I'm sorry, what? Are you high? You know, let's impeach that president. In America, you may have scoffed when you heard it. You may have said that's impossible. You may have said that's not the president's job. But by the end of that decade, your people were galvanized. Why? Because your people said, we're Americans. We can do anything. I could talk to you about your military and how amazing you are. At times I struggle to speak English. I get tongue-tied. Can you imagine having to sit here, listen to me, not talk to you in English, but talk to you in German? The only reason I don't have to do that is because of the American military. I could talk to you about how amazing your economy is. All the innovation. I love the innovation. This morning, I don't know what the dial was on your temperature when I was in my car. It was at 28 when I got in my car this morning. I have seat warmers. I am a big fan of innovation and creativity. All these reasons are reasons you're a great nation. You're number one. But not one of them makes you unique or exceptional. You see, there's 220 countries in the world. Plenty of people live around the world who are equally optimistic, just not as a culture. There are plenty of militaries, there are plenty of economies. Why are you an exceptional nation? What you're about to hear from me is not my opinion, it's fact. You may hate what I'm about to say. You may say everything you just say right now is the reason I hate America. That's fine, but you can't dispute it's fact. Why are you an exceptional nation? Let's get back to narrative. What is the battle of the day? You see, we're all focused on the small battles. I look at your culture. It's left versus right. It's liberal versus conservative. It's Trump versus Biden. It's CNN versus Fox. These are not the battles of our day. The real battle is the battle of liberty versus freedom and tyranny, but also understanding what that has to do with why you're exceptional. You see, your founders did something when they started up your nation, when the idea of America was still in its infancy. You said what your rules of law were going to be about. You see, every other nation in the history of the world did what? They built their laws on man, what was popular. Sometimes they were right, sometimes they were wrong. But America is the only nation that said, no, we are not basing our laws on man. We are basing our laws on nature's law and nature's God. Amen. What does that mean? What does that mean? That means that there are some things that are self-evident, that never, ever change. They were true when the Garden of Adam and Eve, with Adam and Eve. They were true when Christ was born. They were true when this nation was born in 1776. And they're true today, and they'll be true in year 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000. We can disagree on what those principles are, but there are some things that are self-evident, and they are eternally true. But the second reason you're exceptional is your form of government. Let me bring you back to narrative. You know what really upsets me about your country? Is your people are amazing, but your politicians and your media are not. Either they're ignorant or they're selling you an agenda. How many times do you hear America being called a democracy? Every day by people left and right. America's not a democracy, and America should never be a democracy. And I'm going to tell you a story to prove it. See, it was Ben Franklin, and he's in Philadelphia. And the Constitution has just become a reality, and he's walking down the street, and he's called out, "Mr. Franklin, sir." The innkeeper shouts to him, "What have you given us?" And what did he respond? Did he say a democracy? The greatest democracy in the world? Or did he say a constitutional republic? I'll come back to that story in 1 second. You see, it's not enough for Americans to say you are not a democracy. Americans need to have a stand and say, not only is America not a democracy, nor will it ever be a democracy, but there is nothing good or noble about democracy. Democracy sucks, and I'm going to prove it to you. Ireland, my old nation. A nation which everyone will tell, oh, it's a great democracy, it's wonderful. Remember coronavirus? Last year, 2021, for 4.5 months, I could not go more than 3 miles from my house. 3 miles. I could leave my house for 2 legal reasons. First, to exercise and walk the dog. And let's just take a moment and have a laugh. Look at this body. Wasn't it clear I was walking the dog every day? I pinky promise swear I did. And the second reason was to go to what the government said was an essential store that could stay open to buy what was an essential supply. That's it. How does that happen? This is the next reason you're an exceptional nation. It happens because in every other nation, bar America, everyone understood one thing. That government is all-powerful, government is almighty, and therefore government can give rights and can take rights. If I don't like what you say, and I have enough people to say you can't say it, you no longer have a right to free speech. If there's a public health emergency, and for everyone's health you have to stay in your house, there's now a new law that says you have to, and you can only leave for those reasons. Why? Because you are the giver of rights and you are the taker of rights. America is the only nation that said what? No, that is not government's job. Government's job is one thing, to protect everyone's God-given rights. And this is where I bring you back to the story of Ben Franklin. This story changed for me in the last 6 months because of what he said next. A constitutional republic, ma'am, as long as you can keep it. How many people today in America want to keep America a constitutional republic? Next reason you're exceptional, your political power. You see, every other nation in the history of the world had centralized power in politics. There's a person at the top. That person's title changes on every so often. We can call them a president. We can call them a prime minister. In Ireland, we call them a Taoiseach. We can call them an emperor. We can call them a supreme leader, a king, a queen. The title doesn't matter. What matters is the power is at the top. And they decide what the nation does. And then it trickles down to a parliament. And then the parliament gets all the rest of the power. And then the little local government that's closest to the people can do absolutely nothing. America's the only nation that said, no, we're not going to do that. The power shouldn't be centralized at the top. The power should be as close to the people as possible. Federalism. The power in your country does not belong in the presidency. So many times, you want to talk about a narrative? I hate this narrative because it's become popular, but it's not true. It's based on a lie. I hear this about Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. They're the most powerful man or person in the world. Really? Have you read the Constitution recently? Where is the power? The power isn't in the presidency. The president has zero power. Congress, the House and the Senate, has 18 clauses of power only in Article 1, Section 8. 18, that's it. The rest of the power is in the states. Are we using that power properly? Next reason you're exceptional. You placed a premium on life. You said all men are created equal, and that we have certain rights, and one of them is you have a God-given right to pursue your happiness. Little story for you, sidetrack. How does Irish John, living in Ireland, 6,000 miles away, get to work with the Blaze? Because I rang Glenn Beck up one day and I said, you need to stop using a term. And it's a term I guarantee most of you have used in your everyday language. It's a term that's become so popular in your country, and I hate it, and I'll tell you why. What is that term? Middle class. Middle class. Why do I hate it? First off, I don't care what you think. I have friends who disagree with everything I say, and I've got friends who agree with a lot of what I say. I only ever ask you to be intellectually consistent and honest. How can you fundamentally say, I believe all men are created equal? And let's use this table. Sir, you're upper class. Ma'am, you're middle class. And sir, you're lower class. But they're all created equal. How is that intellectually consistent? But the thing that you need to understand about a class system is, it's like genders in 2022. It can keep going and going and going and going. Let me give you the English class system. Upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, and lower class. But you're all equal, right? Nope. But the second reason I hate it, because it goes against why America changed the world. You see, America always said, you have one life, one opportunity, make of it what you will. But what are we telling our kids? What are we telling our kids? Are we telling them that message? Or are we telling them whether you're Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Mitt Romney or John McCain or Barack Obama? They all said the same thing in their election campaign. The success to America is growing and having a vibrant middle class. Really? What is that telling people? Be average. Don't step out of line. Don't be unique. Don't seek to be the best you can be. Just don't step out of line. Be average. Is America average? Should America aspire to be average? It's time to break those shackles. It's time to stop telling people to be average, to get in line. It's time to start telling America not to be great again, but to be exceptional again. And start encouraging people to live their dreams. Next reason you're exceptional. Your founders did many amazing things, but they also understood human nature. Look around at society today. All I ever hear people talk about is their rights. My friends on the left want to talk about their right to contraception, their right to healthcare, their right to abortion. My friends on the right want to talk about their right to free speech, their right to guns. I'm not disagreeing with the people on the right. But you know what's missing from the discourse? Your responsibilities. You see, nature abhors a vacuum. When you only focus on your rights, what happens? Well, someone's got to pick up the slack. Someone's got to tidy up your room. And that is always, always government. I'm going to prove it to you. In your founding document, your Declaration of Independence, they said not once but twice, this is how important it was to them. It is the right of the people to alter and abolish and to institute new government. And not two lines unsaid. Under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for future security. Why do we find ourselves in the place we find ourselves in 2022? We can point the finger at everyone we want, but we also need to point the finger at ourselves. And we have abdicated our responsibility in large part because the states have forgotten their job. I spoke to you about the real power in the states. Federalism. That's where the power lies. But how many times have you seen your federal government take power from the states without a bullet being fired, without even a debate? You don't need to worry about paying your police and your firefighters. We'll do it with the federal dollars. You don't need to worry about education. We'll do it through the Department of Education. You don't need to worry about local issues, about your banks. We'll bail them out for you. We need to start taking our responsibility. There was a great story which I love, which only happened in America. It happened about 20 years ago. There was a natural disaster in Texas. And of course, FEMA comes in. Hey, we're here to help. And what did the people do? Met them at the city limits and said, we're good. We don't need your help. Off back to DC. Why? We got this. Ronald Reagan famously said, and it's time we remember these words, government is never the solution. Government is always, always the problem. Next reason you're exceptional. I look around at the history in your country, at the narrative today, and all I ever hear people saying is the solution to America's problems is what? Winning. We got to win this election. I hear people say the solution right now in 2022 is the Republicans taking the House and the Senate. I hear people say that the answer is Donald Trump in 2024, or Ron DeSantis, or Kristi Noem, or Nikki Haley, or fill in the blank. Here's the truth about your nation. Your nation was never built on winning, and I'm going to prove it to you. Is there a married couple in the audience? Don't worry, you don't have to say anything. Just stand up if there is. Any married couple. You're going to be my puppets for 2 seconds. Take a stand, middle table. What's your names? Stand up. Karen and Charlie. Nice to meet you. You're no longer Karen and Charlie. I'm going to introduce who you are. You, sir, get the honest. This is an amazing job. You're going to love you volunteered for this. You, sir, are George Washington. You don't have a nation without this gentleman. George Washington has everything he would want at this point in time. He's got fame. He's got fortune. He's got land. He's got prestige. You know when a politician comes into the room? Sometimes they have to go up to you and go, hi, I'm John. I'm running for so-and-so office. And they have to introduce themselves and they give you a fancy card. George doesn't have that problem. George walks through those doors and everyone in this room turns around and goes, that's George Washington. He has everything you would want. This is his wonderful wife, Martha. And I want you to play along and just think about how this goes on in the conversation in your head. George is out one day and Martha's on the farm. And he comes home. And I don't know how they spoke to each other, so I'm going to ad-lib with language of the day. Martha says, hi, honey, how are you? How was your day? And on this particular day, George is a bit squeamish. She's like, it's okay. He's kind of avoiding eye contact with her. And she's like, something's up. He's up to something. George, did you make any decisions today? Did anything unusual happen in your world today? And he says, well, it's funny you should ask that, honey. We need to talk. I made a decision today. I've become the leader of the Continental Army. I'm going to go off and fight the British in war. Pause that story for a second. What happened next? Does Martha run into his arms and give him the most passionate kiss she's ever given and said, George, I have never been more proud to be your wife. I love you. Thank you for risking all this fame, all this fortune, all our land for the chance to fight for freedom. Or, and I can speak about this now, did Martha give George the look only a wife can give a husband? And I've had that look, yes I have. Of, you did what? Are you crazy? Go sleep on the sofa tonight. Thank you so much for playing along. You can decide what happened next. But as important as it is to have fun, we also need to talk serious. You see, I love your history. Might come across. I love George Washington. I love Ben Franklin. I love John Adams. I love all your founding fathers. But we have forgotten certain stories. And I'm going to share 3 very short stories with you that Americans need to remember. The first one was Francis Lewis. Who was Francis Lewis? If he lived today, AOC would hate him. Why? He was a millionaire and a billionaire and a business owner. He signed the Declaration of Independence. What happened to him? Did he win? What was his prize? Well, the society said, yeah, your prize is you get arrested, and every earthly possession you've ever worked for is now taken by the king. John Hart. John Hart was a farmer in New Jersey. He signs the Declaration of Independence. I bet he won something great, didn't he? Yes, he did. He returned to his farm in New Jersey, and he was greeted with an execution order from the king. He goes into hiding, and because that winter was really harsh, in 1776, he eventually dies. Richard Stockton was a lawyer. He served on the New Jersey Supreme Court. He signed your Declaration of Independence. I bet he won a wonderful prize, right? He was locked up, he was starved, he was tortured, his fortune was stolen, and the ultimate prize was his last days on God's green earth were spent living off the charity of friends. You don't have a nation without people making the ultimate sacrifice. But John, that's so 240 years ago. Have you not got a modern day story? I do. Right, this is where I talk to you about the military once again. They were called the greatest generation for a reason. You know why Americans are unique that you don't seem to appreciate anymore? Americans during World War II lied. Yes, you lied. Many people you know or know of lied. What was their lie? You see, it'd be understandable in World War II if you're in America. You're in this amazing country, and there's a war going over that way. Why should I get involved? Americans didn't lie to get out of service. They lied to get into service. The stories of 16 and 17-year-old men who said, I am 18, send me over there, I want to fight for freedom. I could talk to you about World War II all day long, but I won't. I'll just tell you one story. We've all heard of it, or heard a version of it. The storming of the beaches of Normandy, where they went in these archaic ships, nothing fancy, nothing comfortable. And the ship would go to the beach, the door would open, and the commander would yell, charge. And their job was to run and storm the beaches. And there were snipers on the hills. Within mere seconds, tens, hundreds, and thousands of people died. What did winning look like for them? What did winning look like for them? You see, the truth about America is you're not about winning, you're about doing the right thing. But this is back where I bring you back to being America being an exceptional nation. See, your founders were the exact opposite to every founders of every other revolution in the history of the world. Why? You see, every other revolution followed a different theme, but the principle was the same. It was always the people at the bottom of society who had absolutely nothing to lose personally and everything to gain by fighting the king or the tyrannical government. Your founders were not that. Your founders had nothing to gain, but everything to lose by signing the Declaration of Independence. Your nation was built not on winning, but it was doing the right thing. If you want to solve America's problems, start not by winning, but by doing the right thing. Last reason you're exceptional. There are many others that I'm forgetting, but I only have a certain amount of time today, and then I'm going to give you some solutions. I'll tell you a story. There was a person who was an American who fought for your country, who believed in the Declaration of Independence, said, I want me some of that freedom, sign me up and send me to war. And he signed up. He went and fought. But you see, America's revolution wasn't we fought the English and we won. No, there was a lot of defeats. George Washington had to retreat and re-galvanize the troops and reassess and re-engage. This American, after many defeats, went, you know what? This isn't going so well. My team isn't doing well. I need to put in a transfer request. I need a trade. I want to go over to the king. Hey, king, can I join you? This isn't going so well over here. And that's what happened. Your founders found that so disgusting, it became a saying in your culture. Don't be a Benedict Arnold. Character matters. It's time we remember that and start instituting character back for men and women. It's time to start leading, not by words, but by deeds. Now, some solutions. This is where my opinion will start coming in. In 2022, we have a crisis in society. and it affects pretty much every family in some way, shape, or form. It's some type of addiction. Gambling, drink, drugs, porn. Regardless of your addiction, the first step is always the same. First, you have to admit the problem. So let's clearly identify the problems that we face right now. First problem, your Constitution. Since the year 2000, you've had a Republican House and Senate and presidency, a Democratic House, Senate and president, and some combination of the two. Has your Constitution been protected? Which part of the Bill of Rights is more secure today than it was in the year 2000? The First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment? It's all been trampled by both sides of the political aisle. Second problem that we need to identify, your debt. In the year 2000, your debt was $5.6 trillion. George Bush came to power. By the end of his 8 years, it was $9.6 trillion. You might remember the president next, Barack Obama, campaigned on what? That George Bush was the most unpatriotic president for adding so much to the debt. Great words, right? And then what happened? In his 8 years, the debt went from $9.6 trillion to $19.6 trillion. 5 years later, including a Republican president and now a Democratic president, your debt has gone from $19.6 trillion to over $30 trillion. Your country is going bankrupt. What happens when that happens? You see, the thing about control and government you need to understand is that they don't need to control every aspect of your freedom, they just need to control every aspect of your life. I'm going to share two policies with you from Ireland, from my great nation, which will come here if you don't start solving your debt. First one is gas. We're all going crazy about gas prices right now. It's up since, what, 80% or 90% since Donald Trump left office. National average is about $4-something a gallon. In Ireland right now, it's $10 a gallon. How do you pursue your happiness when gas prices are $10 a gallon? You're a small business. You have this great idea. You want to innovate. You want to create. You want to create jobs. How do you pursue your happiness at $10 a gallon? That will come here because it's not gas prices. It's not the price of oil. It's not greedy profits making abilities. It's all taxes. Second one, income tax in Ireland. Every cent you earn over $35,000 is taxed at 40%. Try and pursue your happiness under that one. See, government doesn't need to tell you everything you need to do. It just needs to limit your freedoms. If you limit the financial ability of someone, they're always looking for more. This is where I bring you back home. What's been proposed in your country right now? I don't know if anyone here is boring like I did and read the Biden budget. I did. It's a wonderful read. Can you see why I'm so much fun? What's one of his proposals? Corporation tax of 28%. To put that into context, communist China, their corporation rate is 25%. How do you pursue your happiness with the highest corporation tax in the world? When you're doing it worse than communist China, that should be a warning sign to every American. Hey, even if you're a liberal, maybe we shouldn't be as bad as communist China. Maybe we should be slightly better. But that's not what's happening. These policies will come to your country. Third solution, correctly identify the enemy you're in. You're facing many great challenges right now, but they all have the same pattern. I could talk to you about Agenda 2030, which will turn into Agenda 2050. I could talk to you about the Great Reset. I could talk to you about tyrannical government. But it all boils down to one philosophical question. What is that? Who decides what the problems in society are and who is best placed to solve them? You see, every other nation said what? It's government's job to solve problems. We know better. Leave it up to us. Or it's the elite's job. In the Great Reset, you have Klaus Schwab. If you're writing a story and you're writing a fictional book of the worst enemy to face, is there a better name than Klaus Schwab? He just sounds like a bad guy, right? And he talks like a bad guy as well, which is even worse. It's like someone should tell him how to speak. But they're saying we know how to solve the world's problems. They're telling you we solve them, not you. See, the American people are different. What made America exceptional was you unleashed the energy and individual genius of man better than any other nation in the history of the world. And I'm going to prove it to you by a story. Ronald Reagan. Why did Ronald Reagan win the Cold War without a rocket being fired? Principles, backbone, but also a belief in your people. If you go back and listen to the speeches that he said time and time again, he said many different words, many different stories, in many different places, but the underlying core principle was the same. What was that? Mr. Gorbachev, I am president of the United States, the best nation in the world. I've unleashed the American people. I've reduced the regulation and burden on them. I've reduced their taxes. If I may quote my 1984 ad, it's morning in America. Mr. Gorbachev, how do you treat your people? You treat them like second-class citizens. They don't act out of inspiring to get to pursue their happiness. They act out of fear because if they're not successful, they or their family will be banished. Wow. Mr. Gorbachev, this war boils down to one question. Which side will out-innovate the other? And to show you the power of that message, to show you how powerful you are as a people, despite voices in your own country, i.e. Ted Kennedy saying, we don't have Star Wars, it's a myth. Gorbachev said what? They might not have it now, but one day they will. You are the answer. It's time to stop saying government is the answer. You as individuals, as Christians, as Americans, have certain benefits. And it's time to start restoring them and start fighting and saying, we are the answer, not government. But to do this, you need to stop accepting the big lie. What is the big lie? The lie I hear from American state to state, Republican or Democrat, that John, in 2022, I as an American have no political power. Sorry, that is a lie, and I'm going to prove it to you. In Ireland, when I lived there, how could I vote? I'll use American terms so you're familiar with them. I could vote for my president every 7 years, and I could vote for the person who served in the House of Representatives. That's it. Americans, how do you vote? For president, for House of Representatives, for senator, for local rep, for governor, for mayor, for commissioners, school board, sheriffs. You have no political power. I don't know what size the ballot is in Oklahoma. I haven't seen one yet. But in Texas, I've been told that at times it's longer than 3 pages long. And you believe you have no political power? Really? But this is also where I remind you of why you're exceptional. You see, let me again use American language. I'm Irish. I'm in Ireland, and I'm part of the Republican Party, and I have a mission. And my mission is to make my district in Ireland the most conservative district in the land. How do I do that? I get the most conservative candidate, right? In Ireland, I have no say in who runs in my election. Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell decide who runs in my district. America has something that no other nation has. What is that? It's a primary system. If you don't like your local House of Representative, your local senator, your local school board, run against them. Get your name on the ballot. You can do it. The question isn't have you got the political power. The question is, are you using it? And this is where I give you a massive wake-up call for this year. Because America follows a certain pattern for the last 60 years. It's like a heartbeat monitor, up and down and up and down. What does that represent? The number at the top represents at least 65%. It goes as low as 64 and goes as high as 70. What does that represent? The number of Americans who vote when the president is on the ballot. This number goes down as low as 40%. What does that represent? The number of people who in America vote when the president is not on the ballot, i.e. this year. Are you using your political power? Because 25% of your people who voted in 2020, if you follow the same pattern, won't vote this year. And what happens then? It's time to start getting engaged with people. It's time to stop saying, why would we vote when the president's on the ballot, the president that has no power, and not vote when the president's not on the ballot? We need to start reaching those people. But we also need to start getting involved at a bigger level. Because we need to start electing people in the state. And this is my home state now. I guarantee you, I will make myself known to every politician in this state. I will be their worst nightmare. I don't care, I want to inspire them to change, but if I have to get them that they just act differently because they don't want to hear from the Irish boy, I will do it. Last solution that I can give you, and then I'm going to finish up. And if you don't hear anything about this from my whole speech, just please listen to this one. I am tired of Americans telling the world what they're against. That's all in your culture. I don't like the left. I don't like progressives. I don't like rhinos. I don't like. It's time to remember why you're exceptional. Why? You see, let me give you an example. I'm married. Imagine there's a couple before you and they're saying, hey, we're going to get divorced. And they're like, hey, why are you getting divorced? What's going on? And one party, the man or the woman, probably the woman, has 27 reasons why she's divorcing her husband. He leaves his socks on the floor. He doesn't put the toilet seat down. He wants to watch football on a Sunday. You know, the litany goes on. Is anyone after listening to those 27 reasons kind of going, I wonder should they stick together? I wonder could they work through their problems? Or are they kind of going, they definitely need a divorce. He needs to move to another state, or she needs to move to another state. It's clearly not solvable. It's ending. Why did I use the number 27? See, Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote your Declaration of Independence, said 27 reasons why America is separating from the king. It wasn't using the modern day cliche of, you know, they say when they break up, it's not you, it's really me. Thomas Jefferson wasn't that polite. He was like, no, it's definitely not us, it's definitely you, and we need to keep an ocean between us. But what did Thomas Jefferson do before he said the 27 reasons? He didn't tell you what he was against, he told you what he was for. That all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among those, but not limited to those, is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By the way, I'm going to prove this to you. 1, think of someone who knows a lot of history or not much history. We all say the cliches, all men are created equal. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Even if you know no American history, you know those. Imagine thinking all these people in the room who know the history of America. Turn to someone and go, hey, can you tell me one of the reasons and quote it verbatim why Thomas Jefferson said we should leave the king? It's not popular. No one in America knows that. Why? Because America is not built on telling the world what you're against. It's built on telling the world what you're for. Start being the beacon of hope. Because I'll tell you as an Irish boy, and I think this is my first opinion of the night. When is America at its best? When you're the Statue of Liberty. When you're holding those principles firm. And what are those principles? What is written on the Statue of Liberty? It's not the Constitution. It's not the Bill of Rights. It's July 4th, 1776, your Declaration of Independence. But you're also shining the light for the rest of the world to say, you can have this too. You are the shining city on a hill. You are the beacon of light. You are the beacon of freedom for the world, but you've forgotten. You've forgotten your story. And you're just starting to tell the world what you're against. It's time to start telling the world what you're for. By the way, this is a Christian principle as well. Christ didn't say to his disciples, I want you to go and tell the world every commandment I have said. He said, no, go share the good news. It's time to share the good news. The good news that freedom brings. The good news that only he can bring. But this is something is special that I'm only giving today because of the week that's in it. One of the disagreements I have with the vast majority of Christians is the way you act tomorrow. Why is that? So many times I've seen it in Catholics, Baptists, Protestants. They gloss over Good Friday. And they just can't wait till Sunday, till the resurrection. Life isn't that way. We need to embrace the bad times because there's a chance we're going to go through a lot of them. But we don't change. Why? Because we have the knowledge and the power that says we are living through bad times now. Let us not forget them, but let us also understand that through our actions, we have hope. That in 3 days, he rises. Let us not gloss over the bad times. Let us remember them and ensure they never happen again. Because we've advanced so much as a society. Look at all the innovation and creativity we have. But have we advanced as a people? If Christ was on the cross right there, would we shout for him to be free, or would we still shout for Barabbas? It's time we grow as a people and start being better. And this is where I finish up. Everyone in life will go through pain. You lose a job. You lose a loved one. Miss out on a girlfriend. When you go through that pain, you have two options as a person. You can come out bitter, or you can come out better. America, for the last 18 months, let's be honest about it, you've come out bitter. You've come out angry. You've come out resentful. It's time to be the America I know you can be. It's time to come out better and rise up. It's time to be the country that you were born and destined to be. You can solve the problems. It's amazing what happens when you go all in. And I'll prove it to you, because these sound like empty words. It's easy for you to say, Irish boy, what have you ever risked? Well, let me tell you what I've risked. You see, I used to be a business person. In 2010, I was a sales and business manager of a construction company. Then I started speaking out, and I lost my job because of the economy. And then ever since, I've worked for minimum wage. I don't come from money. But last year, I made a decision. I saw what was happening in your country. I said, I can't stand by and let the country I love fall. I have to do something. So what did I do? I risked my life savings to do a massive tour. I did 60 events in 80 days in 14 states talking about reclaiming America's narrative. I knew that when that tour ended, I would go back to Ireland. No job, no money, no nothing. But what happened? I got my American dream last year, because now I didn't have to go back to Ireland. I now live in the great state of Oklahoma in America. And not only did I get my American dream, but I got the dream girl, and she put a ring on it. But my job isn't done. You see, I've cashed in my pension. Any financial people in the room, if someone said to you, I'm going to cash in my pension, the last resource you have, would you say that was a smart move, especially in this economy? I've cashed in my pension. I'm going around this country to anyone who will have me, telling me why your country is exceptional. Why? Because I'm all in. Because I know if America falls, the world falls. I see the people who are taking over the world. See, when I first started speaking out in 2010, I would talk about growing government. I'd talk about all the tyrannical plans they have. And people would say, prove it to me. And I'd say, well, Obama said this, Congress did this, the UN is doing this, and if you join all these dots in this speech together, you get it. And that's like, that's too much work. I don't have to do that in 2022. I just send them to the World Economic Forum. They're telling you what they want. You will eat meat once a week. You will own nothing and be happy. And they're telling you will have this by 2030. So how do we solve it? The last one. Last story. George Washington. The Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia is in crisis, and he's sent for. They need George Washington. They need his leadership. And he goes. But he doesn't do anything. George Washington, you don't have a country without him. He is the greatest founder, in my opinion. Why? Because he had many opportunities to get power. They called for him to go to Philadelphia. He could have got to Philadelphia and said, kiss my ring, get in line behind me, and I will bring you to the promised land. He didn't do it. Instead, he was silent. Until one day, there's a political squabble going on. And he stands up. And everyone goes quiet. He stands up. What? Is he actually going to speak? Yeah. What did he say? These are the words you need to hear today. He said, let us raise to a standard to which the wise and honest can repair. The rest is in the hands of God. If we work like it depends on us, knowing and praying like it depends on him, because it does, we make America the best comeback story since Jesus Christ. Thank you so much.